we were told that 12 members of this UN agency, this massive UN agency with 30,000 employees, were involved in October 7th. We were told 12. Israel was saying 12 of their employees were involved in October 7th. It helped get UNWA defunded by so many countries immediately, even though Israel brought forward no proof. Well, now we hear from UNWA, their report, that Israel, quote unquote, coerced some of the agency employees to falsely admit Hamas links. And this is a question for those of you out there, for those of you in the comments, what do you think the word coerced means in this Reuters headline? What do you think they mean by coerced? Torture, straight up torture. So we learned these people were tortured in order to say that their colleagues were involved in October 7th. And that garbage was then used by the U.S. and much of the EU to defund, and Canada, to defund this massive aid agency, which is the largest aid agency in all of Palestine, and amounts to now over 9 million hospital and medical visits a year, has over 700 schools that they operate, obviously gives food and medicine and everything else. But now we know that Israel tortured the UN employees. I mean, how is that not a massive story? I don't mean one Reuters article. I mean, headlines, banners everywhere, all over CNN. Israel is torturing UN employees. How is that not everywhere? Bananas. I mean, they've also murdered UN employees, so there's that too. The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees said some employees released into Gaza from Israeli detention reported having been pressured, quote unquote, by Israeli authorities into falsely stating that the agency has Hamas links and that staff took part in the October 7th attacks. The assertions are contained in a report by the UN Relief Agency, UNWA, or UNRWA if you hate sun gods, reviewed by Reuters and dated February 2024, which detailed allegations of mistreatment in Israeli detention. Abuse they said they had experienced included, wait for it, severe physical beatings, waterboarding, and threats to harm their family members. How is this? How is not even the UN talking about this? And I don't just mean UNWA. How is this not? I mean, maybe it will be eventually, but how is this not a major meeting at the UN right now? So, folks, Israel is torturing and murdering our employees. Do we care about that? Should we say anything about that? Because the head of the UN is not doing anything about this genocide. Obviously the US is the one that keeps vetoing the Security Council votes, but they're not doing anything about this genocide. And here you have more evidence that Israel is not only murdering UN employees, but torturing them. And some of the countries that had ended their funding of this aid agency, massive agency, and by the way, their budget is over $1 billion a year, massive aid agency, and their funding was getting cut left and right. But now some countries are re-upping, coming back after there's been no evidence of this supposed link to Hamas. Sweden and Canada resumed funding UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees. So at least Sweden and Canada are back in funding UNWA. Other countries like Spain have increased their funding to try to make up for the decrease from other countries. I brought to you previously that Israel has been trying to crush UNWA for years. And one of the key reasons that they have to work so hard to crush UNWA is because just the existence of this aid agency means that the Palestinians are refugees. And guess what? If you're a refugee, that means, if you're defined as a refugee, that means you have a home somewhere else. And where were those homes? I'll let you take a guess on that one. Where were the homes that these Palestinians are refugees from? Well, they're in Israel. So Israel does not want to acknowledge that Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, etc., are refugees. And if you have a refugee aid agency, it's in the name that these are refugees, then it acknowledges, not only does it give medical visits and all these things that Israel doesn't want them to have, but it acknowledges that these are refugees that have a home somewhere else. And Israel cannot handle that acknowledgement.